Well, if you've watched The Provocation, you will know that we looked at the difference between literary fiction and genre. So I'm going to show you how that works in reality. The first text we're going to look at, and I'm not going to look at linguistic devices today, I'm going to look at structure and content. Text one is Middlemarch, 1871. It's a realist novel, which I've mentioned before. It's life portrayed as it really is. Now, look at the text. It's one long paragraph, and that's what it is in the book, by the way. And just so you know, here's the book itself. It's a very long book. In fact, it's nearly 1,000 pages long. 828. So, listen to the complexity of the sentences. Now, it is 19th century, but even then, it's quite complicated. I'll read the first bit down to newspaper. Miss Brooke had the kind of beauty which seems to be thrown into relief by poor dress. Her hand and wrists were so finely formed that she could wear sleeves not less bare a style than those in which Blessed Virgin appeared to Italian painters. And her profile, as well as her stature and bearing, seemed to gain the more dignity from her plain garments, which by the side of provincial fashion gave her the impressiveness of a fine quotation from the Bible, or from one of our elder poets in a paragraph of today's newspaper. She goes on to discuss the differences between the two sisters. There's a sister as well, who is more practical, but less intellectual. So it's all about character. There's no plot. There's no genre conventions. It's just the beginning of a story about two people and their differences, and the main character being Dorothea. Now, text 2, 1927, quite possibly my most favourite novel of all time, and I'll try and explain why. So this is just the first 4 paragraphs, and I'll show you a few structural features that are so mind-blowing. It never ceases to amaze me. So first of all, it starts. Yes, of course. If it's fine tomorrow, said Mrs. Ramsay, but you'll have to be up with the lark, she added. Now, this is a special term, and hopefully this link will work. Yes, it will. It's called in media res, which means in or into the middle of a narrative or plot. Now, we know it's called To the Lighthouse, so we can assume that this is a mother talking to someone else, and that someone else has said, can we go to the lighthouse? Yes, of course. If it's fine tomorrow, said Mrs. Ramsay, but you'll have to be up with the lark, she added. Then there's this lengthy paragraph. And I want to read it, but I'm not, because I'm just mindful of time. But I just want you to draw attention to this. We're focalised through the 6-year-old boy's mind, and he's on the floor cutting up pieces, sort of images outside of a magazine. And it says here, he was feeling heavenly bliss because of what his mother had said about the potential of going to the lighthouse. It was fringed with joy. The wheelbarrow, the lawnmower, the sound of poplar trees, leaves whitening before rain, rooks cawing, brooms knocking, dresses rustling. All these were so coloured and distinguished in his mind that he had already his private code, his secret language, though he appeared the image of stark and uncompromising severity, with his high forehead and his fierce blue eyes, impeccably candid and pure, frowning slightly at the sight of human frailty, so that his mother, watching him guide his scissors neatly round the refrigerator, imagined him all red and ermine on the bench, or directing a stern and momentous enterprise in some crisis of public affairs. Well, that is one long, what's called stream of consciousness. Very unstructured, very sort of just thoughts flowing from the writer's head almost. That's how it feels. Interpreting what she thinks of how the character's thinking. Okay? Then that second structural. But, said his father, stopping in front of the drawing room window, it won't be fine. And here's a very psychological thing. Had there been an axe handy, a poker, or any weapon that would have gashed the hole in his father's breast and killed him there and then, James would have seized it. Such were the extremes of emotion that Mr. Ramsay excited in his children's breasts by his mere presence. Now, I just want to mention one more thing that's just phenomenal. So, very short dialogue, paragraph, long stream of consciousness. Short dialogue, long stream of consciousness. Now, look at the shape that the lighthouse creates. Sort of a middle thing in the middle and then two wider things. Short, wide. All right, structurally almost echoing the shape of a lighthouse, but it goes deeper than that. And hopefully I can show you. So this is a online version. First of all, the book's divided into 3 parts. Can you see? So window, 19 chapters, time passes, 10, the lighthouse, 14. In the first chapter, part, it's just a few hours on an evening on a holiday in Scotland. And different characters have different impressions and nothing happens. It's just character impressions, thoughts and feelings. No plot. In the middle, the much shorter passage isn't the Ramsay family. It's the Ramsay family home. And if I remember rightly, because I haven't read it recently, it's the experiences of the servants that are looking after the family home. And in that section, I think it's here, time passes, we learn here, in brackets, Mr. Ramsay, stumbling along a passage one dark morning, stretched his arms out, but Mrs. Ramsay, having died rather suddenly the night before, his arms, though stretched out, remained empty. So the substance of a real story, death, love and death and birth, is relegated to just one tiny little bracketed paragraph. But there's more. If I can find it. Prue Ramsay, which is one of the sisters, died that summer in some illness connected with childbirth, which was indeed a tragedy, people said. Everything, they said, had promised her well. Not only is it bracketed off and very short, it's also zero emotion there. It's just like almost like a newscaster on TV. And finally, remember this is written in the 1920s, so post-war, a shell exploded, 20 or 30 young men were blown up in France, among them Andrew Ramsay, whose death, mercifully, was instantaneous. So, I just want to go to the top. Please go to the top. There we go. It's almost shaped what how my lecturer described it was like an H. Long, short, long. And in that very short bit, and within it even shorter, bracketed off 3 deaths, which would ordinarily be the story, the main story. But here it's minute. And so the final passage is actually the remnants of the family finally getting to go to the lighthouse. So in a sense, there is a tiny bit of plot right at the beginning. Yes, of course, if it's fine, we'll go to the lighthouse. Finally, at the end, James the boy, as an adult, gets to go to the lighthouse. So there is a plot, but not much of one. This is high culture. This is literary fiction. I'm running out of time, so I don't really want to go into too much detail. This is 50 Shades of Grey. Simple language. Although I would say it does contain some foreshadowing. All right, which I just don't have time to explain. So if you want, you might want to read the first paragraph and work out what I'm inferring. But I just wanted to end on this. This is a typical Mills and Boon romance. It's historical romance, but it is a romance. And I hope you'll see it's a much easier read. No complexity. We know what's going on. We can probably guess what's going to happen. So I'll read it and you can see. October 1848. The tall, broad-shouldered figure standing before the altar sent shivers crawling up and down her spine. In desperation, Lady Flora Macreath turned to her father, the Earl of Aberwild, whose grip around her arm had not relaxed once on the 5-minute walk from the castle to the kirk. Father, she quailed under that implacable green glare. Then her father bundled Flora none too gently to one side of the porch, out of sight, out of hearing. You'll not disgrace me again, Flora, he hissed. Do you hear me? He shook her arm. You'll do as I bid ye, for the love of your family and your clan. Think of your brothers and your sisters. You owe them this. Her stomach roiled so violently she had to swallow several times to prevent herself being physically sick. She mentally scrabbled about for more of the persuasive arguments she had rehearsed in her bedchamber as her maid had prepared her for this wedding. Her wedding. To a man she had never met. To a man whose name she had never heard until Sunday, 2 days ago, when her father had announced her forthcoming nuptials. All her protestations had fallen on deaf ears. The banns had already been read, and finally she understood why she had been forbidden to attend church services on the past 3 Sundays. Father, please. Why didn't I run when I had the chance? Right, so there are some of the genre conventions, broad shoulders, overwhelming emotions, marriage, love or not love. This is clearly a romance novel, and we can clearly identify it through its genre conventions. This is generally considered low culture or genre fiction. Okay, that's it. I hope this has been of some help. I'll see you next week.